Okay, in this video, we're going to look at athlete monitoring and why it's so important. We're going to go through these 6 steps that you can do to try and help you maximize your rate of improvement and cope with your training better. A lot of athletes have used these behaviors to really maximize the rate of improvement during a season. So the reason for addressing this is that we all know every athlete is time poor and really struggle to have enough hours in the day to recover. So really we need to be more intelligent about how we train and not just think we can do more and more each season in order to get faster. In order to maximize your improvement, you really need to complete the training program that's been written for you. So in order to do that, you need to manage your well-being, your health, your injuries, and also making sure you make the most of every training session. So understanding how you should train in every session also determines how well you cope. If you just do every single session flat out, you're not going to make it to the end of the program. So we're going to go through these 6 steps that you can do to try and help you maximize your rate of improvement and cope with your training better. And the first one is to track your improvement. In rowing, we can track it on the water, but the weather and the stream are very variable. The best way to track improvement is on the land, so the ergo or the stationary bike. On the ergo, you can use an app like Ludum. You can record all the stuff you're doing and gives you a real idea of your trend of improvement, especially if you repeat the same training sessions regularly over a season. You really can track your progress. So having that is a really good baseline to see, well, am I improving quickly enough? The next thing is to record the actual training you're doing. You'll be given a training program and it'll have the mileage and everything, the weights you need to do. But at the end of the season, do you really know how much you've trained? So I think it's really important that you record the actual training. So wearing a device like a heart rate monitor or a GPS device gives you real insight as to how much time you've done in the water training or ridden your bike or done in the gym, you know, what distance you've traveled when you've done the training, and also how hard you've done it, how much time you spend in every training zone with your heart rate. Use heart rate for training. Now, if a long training session, your heart rate is going to rise during an ergo session, that's fine. You don't want to go slower and slower during the session just to keep your heart rate the same, but it's good to know that maybe over 320 minutes your heart rate rises from 140 to 160, but some days if it starts at 140 goes to 180, well, something's different, isn't it? So it's good to have that insight. The next thing is to understand the difference between the internal training load and the external performance. Typically, you get on the ergo, you do 320 minutes, and you'll know what split you need to do. Let's say 2-minute splits for each of those. And then one day you get on and suddenly you're struggling to do 2 minutes, you're doing 202, 203, and you think, I'm rubbish, I'm unfit, I'm soft. Well, all these sorts of things start going through your head. When in fact, if you're wearing a heart rate monitor, you might see your heart rate's 10 or 15 beats higher. Well, obviously something's not quite right. So maybe that gives you a bit of a picture that maybe you're just a bit run down, tired, dehydrated for whatever reason. And then the decision is, do you train at the split, which means it's going to be a harder session than if you normally planned it, or do you back off a bit on the split, have the heart rate at the same sort of level, so maybe the training load is the same internally, but the split's higher, which means that maybe you can cope with the next sessions better. And that's a decision you need to make on the fly. The other thing is to do morning monitoring. So every morning when you wake up, you should just measure certain things and just do it every morning, and it's repeatable. And there's millions of different things you can measure. People have all sorts of fancy measurements they want, but the basic ones you really need are your resting heart rate when you wake up, either by looking at your device that you wear when you're asleep, your Polar or Garmin, you can look at the resting heart rate during the night and record that. Standing up and do a standing heart rate afterwards. So you stand up for a minute, then measure your heart rate again. What's the difference? Measure your body weight, maybe record how well you feel or how well the training went yesterday. Just those sorts of metrics, and just measure them regularly. And then as time goes on, you start to see, you wake up, there's a change in these numbers. Maybe your heart rate's gone up by 10 beats. That doesn't necessarily mean you won't train, but if you do that and then you hop on the ergo and your heart rate's also elevated, it starts to give you a clearer picture as how well you're doing and how well you're coping. And that means when you track improvement, it may not be that you're just getting better on your scores, it might be that the heart rate's coming down when you're training. So there's all sorts of different ways of tracking improvement. And then the final tip is communication. With all this data you're collecting, it's important that the athlete and the coach keep communicating all the time so everybody understands what's going on. The coach knows that today's been a hard session, or the coach knows in the morning that your heart rate's elevated, or you don't feel very well, or there's pressure at home, or you've got exams coming, all sorts of stuff. It's important that communication is part of this whole picture. It's not just about collecting loads of results. So if you found this video interesting, please subscribe. We're going to have many more videos like this. And please, in the comments below, if you've got any comments, any ideas, or things you might do, or things you've tried that have really worked, we'd love to hear from you.